I was going to ask you, Richie, like, obviously you never played for John Tortorella, but I'm sure you see things. Even when you were playing, like when he
Yeah,
was
yeah.
coaching, like, what do you think of his style? Do you still think it? I don't know. I don't want to say works, but works
Yeah. Yeah.
in
I don't know.
today's
Like,
game.
I think it's tough, right? Because there's a lot of, I think when you watch more and more hockey, there's more and more teams that don't have a ton of structure. And then you could just, it like sticks out like a sore thumb almost right when you see it. So, like, obviously that's not John. And like the teams that seem to have the structure and play a style that when you watch, you can see like everybody kind of knows what they're doing on the ice. And then you watch some teams that like you literally watch the whole game and you can't figure out what their system, what their style, what how they want to play is. And those teams never seem to have success, right? If you look
Yeah.
back at like Florida, Tampa, Vegas, like all these teams that have had success over the past few years. Even Edmonton like plays a high flying like a speed game, but at least they have like a system there that everyone on the ice knows what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I guess long story or long answer to your question is I do think it is because like every time that I've had success and won, it's always been oriented around a good system.
Right.
And like I don't know if this is old school, but I really do think like defense does win championships.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think you're so far ahead. Like in playoffs, whenever you play all the way up to the finals, like it's 2.5, 3 months long. You're not going to have your legs every single night. And what a system does is basically protects you when you don't have your legs. It kind of just like shelters your team a little bit. And for John, like his system, like he's going to pound that into you. Like you're not going to just kind of freewheel, play freewheeling hockey with him. So, um, he's demanding with it. I'm not sure. Like I've never played for him, so I don't know like what you can and can't do in his system. But very much what Daryl did, like you can make plays, but you better make the plays, sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
um, like I've always believed that's how you win, and he's one of the best, one of the strictest at it. But in order to end up winning, I do think you need to play a certain way, and that way is kind of what he preaches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. I agree with you, Richie. Yeah, that structured play is important, and you can see obviously they're not quite up there with maybe the competitors in the NHL as far as Stanley Cup champions. But I think in the last 2 years, like he's gotten them to play a certain way where they're finding ways to win games maybe they shouldn't have, based on what
Yeah,
you're saying, like the hard work, the identity, the
yeah,
attitude, right? I mean, they're not scoring many goals. Probably in the last 10 games, they're giving up probably way too many goals.
Way too
It's
many.
probably
Yeah.
pulling hair out, but
yeah,
I think overall in the last 2 years, he's gotten to play a certain way
yeah,
that's digestible for fans. When they're going to lose a certain way, it's with a fight.
yeah,
They're going to compete. They're in the games. They're hanging around.
yeah. And they've been punching above their weight class a little bit. Like if you look at
Right.
the roster, I think you could probably, like I'm guessing Danny would even agree that they kind of have to get more on the roster to get to that next level. But
Yeah.
like I think when you're in the system or in the place that Philly's in, it's easier to teach that system now than it would be, say, in like 3 or 4 years when they are planning to be a cup contender and not still in the rebuild. I think it's easier to teach it as these players kind of progress through their career instead of like, okay, now we're good now we'll teach you this, because then you have all sorts of bad habits. Like there's different players on like great players on teams that are rebuilding that when you watch play, it's just like basically go out, do whatever you want,
Right.
and we'll live with the results. But then like once those teams get good, I think it's going to be tough to pound those different I guess, intangibles on the ice into those players because they've been doing one thing for so long, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're going to try to win now, so now you have to do this. Whereas the thing I'll give John is he pounds those into the players basically from the get-go, and it's not like we'll worry about this later when we're trying to win. We'll do it now, and then that way when we are ready to win, it's not a whole new thing of don't turn pucks over, get pucks deep, that sort of thing. Like I watch the Flyers, I don't see him like handcuffing guys, which I think is kind of what Daryl was like too. Like he wouldn't tell you couldn't make plays, but there were certain plays that if you were going to make, you had to make. And that's kind of what I see with John. Like he allows you to make plays and do things. It's just like, don't turn pucks over. Like if you're going to make the play, just don't turn the puck over. And I think it's way easier to learn when you're 18, 19, 20 than it is when you're, 7 years in the league at 25 and now saying basically like, oh, now we're good. Now we're going to try to play a certain way. So
Yeah, right.
I just don't know if it works like that. And you see different teams around the league like trying the other way where it's just like a free flow, and then it's just, I don't know. I find it would be bad for your growth of basically learning a whole new NHL at whatever in your mid 20s because you've been doing one thing for so long, and then all of a sudden you get good and you have to do it the other way to really have a chance to win.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's obviously great for guys like Mitch Goff. His as offensive as he is, like the growing pains of playing away from the puck and doing these things that he might not be coached on, to what you're talking about, just like go on the ice and just go score goals and get points, and no one's really going to say anything.
Yeah, and those offensive skills, they're not going to go anywhere, like just because you're putting an emphasis on back checking or putting the puck in different areas isn't going to like take away. It's not like in 7 years or 8 years when they're going for a cup, you're just going to be like, oh, I forgot how to toe drag somebody at the blue one. Right. Like they're always going to be there. It's just like, I think it's more of just like an add-on than it is like detracting from your skill set, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's more around like laying a strong foundation, right? Like something to hang your hat on. Like help these guys mature. And then find their own. Yeah.
And that's like most young players like who get into the NHL, the majority of it is on offensive talent.
Right.
Whereas like when you get to the NHL, I would say like myself included, when I got there, there's so much more you can learn on the defensive side of the puck. So I would think most young players getting in the NHL, especially now, like with watching the World Junior, every single player on the ice is highly skilled. Mm-hmm. But when you get to the NHL, those defensive details are probably a little fewer and far between.
Yeah.
At least at the elite level anyways.
For sure. Right.